Okay, good afternoon. Today we'll be talking about typography, and typography is also a very good part of design. It's elements that shape design as well. Last week we spoke about colors and all the things you need to know about colors. This week we'll be talking about typography and how it influences design and everything you need to know about typography before you start making mobile or web application design. We are going to go over some learning objectives. You should be able to understand a couple of things after this class, things like typeface, font, leading, kerning, tracking, hierarchy, and then you should also be able to understand contrast, consistency, and alignment when it comes to design. And you should also appreciate the importance of design in readability and user experience design. What exactly is a typography? Typography is the art and technique of arranging type to make written language legible. The dictionary explanation of typography is what is written here. But when it comes to design, typography is more. It involves the selection of types. It involves the selection of typefaces, point size, line lengths, and this is a text that is written called typography. And when you look at the anatomy of this text, you can see every single letter is being detailed down, which shows that a lot of things goes into typography. When it comes to design, each kind of type you are using depends on what exactly you are trying to achieve. And by the end of this class, we'll go over all the type of typography and the type that you'll be using when it comes to UX design. Key components of typography. The first thing here is the typeface, which is the overall design of letters, numbers, and symbols. Example, Helvetica or Times New Roman. In the picture example, we have Cambria at the left, and then we have Bellotra at the right. These are all typeface. The way you know a typeface is by the design. Bellotra feels a bit fat, and Cambria looks a bit slim. The moment you see a text, you should be able to identify it by the typeface. The next is the font. The font is the specific weight, style, or size of a typeface. For example, we have Helvetica as a typeface, but the font is Helvetica Bold because it's a very, very thick Helvetica. These are sizes of font weight from 100 to 900. You could see that this, for example, can be a typeface called Times New Roman, but it has different font weights. And this is the difference between a typeface and a font. Almost all typefaces have different fonts. Only one text can have a particular typeface. If the text is Helvetica, it's always going to be Helvetica. But if we have New Times Roman, we can have New Times Roman bold, we can have Helvetica bold. The next is the serif and the sans serif font. These are very important and crucial to UI UX design. The serif font can be recognized with a small decorative strokes at the ends of their letter, e.g. Times New Roman. You could see a sharp edge coming out at the end of the A, like a slab. While for the sans serif font, it has no decorative stroke. An example of a typeface is an Arial, and when you choose an Arial or a vertical sans serif font, they are not going to have that edge. Now, as a designer, what does that mean to you? Whenever you see a font, you would recognize it either by a serif font, a sans serif, or a script, or any other font that it belongs to. So you should be able to look at a font and to understand which category this kind of font falls into. The serif have these edges, and then the sans serif do not have these edges. And the way to understand what the sans even stands for is without. So if serif has edges, the one that does not have the edges, which says without the edges, is going to be sans serif. Any other way you want to memorize it or understand them, that's fine. But just giving you an idea of how you should be able to remember them. Hierarchy also is a very good important component of typography. When you look at this text, there's always going to be the first thing that you're going to read, which is probably going to be this letter here. Then you read this, and then probably perhaps maybe you might go to this, and you go to this, and you go to that. Now, this visual arrangement that guides your eyes to read this text in a particular order is what we call hierarchy, and it's a very crucial part of typography. Understanding hierarchy and knowing how to play with hierarchy, build attention to create alignment and consistency, a very important part of design. Next up, we have alignment. With text, you either want to align them to the left, to the right, to the center, or to justify them. Whenever you are designing, you have to make sure that your text is aligned to a particular corner. A very good rule of thumb as a designer is that when you're in doubt, always make sure that your texts are aligned to the left. Most issues that a designer would encounter when aligning text is the way they align it. If you align a text and it's having one text at the last, it's called an orphan, which is not a very good way to align text. So make sure that it has at least two words, which is the ideal way. Next up is tracking. The space between each text is what we call tracking. From the T to R, there's a space between there. From R to A, there's a space between there. And this can actually visually impair the user from either making it easy to read or making it hard to read as well. So knowing the right amount of tracking that you can put between a text is also a very crucial aspect of typography or line height. The space between a line, a text at the top, and then the other text that is at the bottom is called line heights. And usually, this is one of the best ways to actually improve the readability of a text. Kerning also looks something similar tracking, but kerning is adjusting the space between individual letters. Rather than doing it equally, unlike the tracking, where the T, the R, the A, the C, the K, the I, the N, all of them are having the same spacing. When it comes to kerning, you probably just want to add maybe one of them together, and then the others will be different. So it's not equally distributed in kerning. It's just adjusting the space between the individual letters, not equally distributed. The principles of a good typography is legibility. You always want to make sure that people can read your text. Not too small, not too big, balanced. Number two, consistency. Over the course of this slide, you have seen different designs, and you can see the heading of each of these slides. Consistency would appear in such a way that throughout the course of this slide, the heading of this slide is always the same. I'm not going to make this heading 30 and then the next one I'll make it 12, right? And then the next one I'll make it bigger. I will have to make sure that all the heading are the same size, and that is how consistency. Contrast. We discussed about contrast last week. The contrast is the ability to just balance the color of a text. Similarly, typography requires such contrast as well. You can use weights, size, and style to create some emphasis and hierarchy for your design. And then the fourth one is white space. This is the space we give for designs so that they could breathe. When you look at this slide, you would see there is a space between this text and this text, and then there's a space between this text, which is always consistent. So white space is giving text a breathing room for clarity, for visual appeal. By the end of this slide, we are going to go over most of these things practically, and you are going to see how we can give text white space and how we can reduce the white space of a text. Alignment. Make sure your texts are aligned properly and neat so that you could have a very professional structure for your design. The type classifications include serif, sans serif, script, display / decorative. There are many different typeface classification, and these are just some examples. We covered the sans serif and the serif the other time. But under the type classification, we have more. We have text that looks like a handwriting. We have text that look like a computer written. We have text that look like a calligraphy. And then we have text that look like a script. Depending on the use case, you would always choose the different types of type classification you want. But as a designer, the only typeface that you would mostly use is the sans serif font, which is this one here. So we do not use serif font or handwritten font. On some occasions, you might use a serif font or a rounded font. 80% of the fonts of the typeface on the internet, on website and mobile apps are all sans serif. And this is due to the readability and legibility that they have for web design. Common mistakes to avoid: using too many fonts at once, mixing a typeface with another typeface, poor contrast between text and background, incorrect line spacing. As you could see here, when we talk about line height, this is too cramped, this is too loose, but then this is just right. And then incorrect line spacing or tracking causing cramped text. All caps for large bodies of text is also hard to read. Does typography matters in design? When you look at the picture by your right, you will see two messages being passed across, but for some reasons, one feels like a promise and the other feels like a threat. This is why typography matters. The same way colors evoke emotions, typeface evoke emotions as well. And by choosing the right typeface, you can send a message to a user. Good typography improves user experience, reinforces brand identity, and guides readers through content seamlessly. It's a key skill for designers, marketers, and anyone creating visual communication. Lastly, your assignment. Now, imagine you're a product designer at a large company. Your manager asks you to prepare a written explanation for the wider team on why typography matters to the company's products and brand. Your task is to write a well-written piece, approximately 2 A4 pages, about 800 to 1,000 words, explaining what typography is and why it is important to design.